Okay. You good, Marty? Please don't bump over the tripod. I think we can start this one classic Crack the Bev. Shout out to Rise Nitro Brewing. Let's get the sound effect. That was very ASMR. I just want to make sure I don't spill this. Cool. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. This is Spencer from Scoped Exposure. You're listening or watching to the Scoped Exposure podcast. I wanted to jump in here and just do a little bit of a kind of solo episode, a Q&A special, as I had mentioned it on the Instagram stories. If you're a follower there, and if you're not, definitely make sure you're following us there. But a part of our 3-year anniversary series of content things, I wanted to do a Q&A, and originally that was going to be on our 3-year podcast with everyone, but we ran short on time. We were actually running really behind, but I just wanted to do kind of like a more special Q&A with the questions that I did get, and I'm here in my house, in my office. Marty, my dog, is just sleeping underneath the tripod, so hopefully he doesn't boop it. But yeah, first off, before I get super into it, I just want to thank you everyone for all the messages and engagement with our 3-year anniversary, the official day. I'm kind of dedicating the rest of this month, August, for a series of different things that revolve around Scoped. So we got some playlists coming up. Podcast is definitely another thing. And we have a special project that I'm not quite ready to drop the spill the beans on officially, but you will see those if you keep up with us on social in the next few weeks here. So without any further ado, essentially I polled y'all on Instagram about, if you guys had any questions about Scoped, about our process, about like really anything. And there's a number of good questions here, so I thought I would just kind of jump into it. And you're listening to this if you give a fuck about what I have to say, and if not, you're probably turning it off and listening to something else. But anything else, let's go. This is a really easy question from my friend Ryan in Winnipeg. A favorite band from each province. And that's going to be really hard because, I have so many favorites from all the different Western Canada provinces. And I think that's what Ryan means, because I'll definitely lose out on picking. It will show my knowledge of like, okay, what bands are from these more really East Coast, West or Eastern Canada provinces. But yeah, we'll just kind of go through it off the top of my head. This is a very, no... what is that called? All gas, no brakes kind of podcast. We're just kind of going and rolling with it. BC. So, definitely off the top of my head, I think of Vancouver and Kelowna as major cities with, bands and scenes from that area. If I had to pick one, though, man, this is going to be a lot harder than I thought of, honestly. I'm going to give it to Putrid Brew out of Kelowna. I think that there's a number of great bands from Vancouver that get a lot of recognition. And Putrid Brew being from maybe a smaller city in that province, Kelowna scene isn't maybe what it used to be maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I feel like musically they can just really write banger like riffs and songs that really just go ahead of what some of the other bands in that province could write. And, like the members of that band are definitely maybe a bit older than, maybe some of the younger generations. So they have experience playing in different bands. Lindsay's vocals also are just unbelievably just insane. So, the 2-song demo I think they put out at the very end of last year, 2019, is like an absolute ripper. Anytime that I've told people about that band, they're always like surprised versus, mentioning call it the Juices, the Worldviews, the Burnaways, more of the local Vancouver hardcore scene. But yeah, shout out to Putrid Brew. shout out to Lindsay. I know you listen to this podcast pretty frequently, so yeah, I'll give Putrid Brew the BC spot. Alberta, that's going to be even harder because there's the number of bands that we film overall. Definitely, the large majority are here in Alberta. I have to take a sip of this mocha before I answer that. If you are an avid listener of the podcast, please let me know if you have a certain bev choice while you're listening, because I'm always curious of that. All right, back to the matter at hand. Favorite Alberta band. I'm gonna say Trench. Trench, I feel like, kind of like Putrid Brew, has members who have been in multitudes of bands, so they've definitely matured in like writing styles and just like the kind of fusion between metal and hardcore elements in their music, and especially off of their latest release, Blossom, is just, it's, I feel like if there's any band out of, Alberta as a whole that should be looked at by like labels and things like that, that aren't already signed to something, is definitely Trench. Their stuff is really, really insane. And to see the growth of that band, from, I think the very first time I filmed them was back in 2016, and they were a 4-piece then, and Jay was in a sling, and I thought that was so sick. So shout out to Trench, all the Green Boys. I have nothing but good things to say about what you guys are doing. Sask now. Obviously, I'm trying to pick these choices based off not what like the norm is, because I know a lot of people rush to Stepping Stone, and Stepping Stone is a fantastic band. Love all those dudes. But I'm trying to choose my choices for those people that might not know certain groups within that scene. Flashback is definitely up there as far as being a really breath of fresh air in like the hardcore space, but I'll give it to maybe a lesser known name, Accelerator, Exelator, or whether the spelling is right on that or not. Accelerator is a project that my friend Chris started, and it is very much just a thrash crossover worship kind of band. If you're into bands like Power Trip or early Metallica stuff, it's just really fast, really ripping. I think Luke from Stepping Stone does the vocals, or at least in the recordings, but I think now he's doing drums. So Accelerate, you find them on Bandcamp. I've been trying to push those guys to put it on Spotify just because that's an easier way of consuming music these days. But Accelerator, Mentally Taxed is like one of my favorite songs off of that demo. So shout out to Chris and the Dive Bomb boys. I'll just do Manitoba so we can kind of keep cooking with this and not stay on one subject. Favorite band from Manitoba, that's my hometown scene, so there's definitely a lot of bands from that area. I might catch some heat as far as like, is this band from Saskatchewan or Manitoba? But like, Means was one of the very first bands that like got me into this more, call it hardcore DIY kind of music. One of the very first local shows that I went to back in 2008 was their last show. That band started in Dauphin, so I'm going to give them the Manitoba pass for that. But that was around the era of like melodic hardcore was like kind of more popular than it is nowadays, and just those records still hold up. I have a couple playlists with some songs off Sending You Strength and some of the other records on there, and I have very fond memories of that. I've been pleading out of hopefully that one day those guys do a reunion of some kind. I 1,000% will be there to document it if that is allowed. And shout out to Means, and shout out to all the other provinces that I'm not going to list my favorite bands from. Ryan, thanks for your question, by the way. Auto Serve said, would you give a Dutch band a spin? And I wanted to include this question just because absolutely. I think the thing that I've learned is like it's definitely maybe when I'm at a show and I maybe only know one or two of the bands on the flyer, and then I'm not really doing any research of the bands prior to these shows. I All I really have to go off of is the band name and the logo. And maybe it's not even the band logo just because the promoter is just doing like the same text font for all the bands. But with all that being said, like, I filmed some weird ass bands. But the fact that I always think about like, has this band ever been documented before? And sometimes I just default to no, because this hobby is very, very niche. And always thinking, is this set going to be important to at least one person now and in 5 and 10 and forever, all the time after that. So it always, maybe it's not like my cup of tea. And like Sonny has talked about that as well. Like, it would be ridiculous to expect every band that he puts out on Hey 56, he actually likes all those bands. And I think you can tell a little bit by like how much effort him or even myself is putting into the caption. But I always try to, make it an even playing field and make sure, bands get, a little bit of recognition. And maybe I don't 100% understand what the band is going for, but at least I can try to put out at least one or two takeaways. And 9 times out of 10, the bands that I do film that maybe aren't in my normal wheelhouse, they're super appreciative. They share it. Usually, like the record label will even shout out the set and thank me. So any Dutch bands that I come alongside, yeah, I'm game to film that. What else do we got here? Marcus, my homie, how do you think shows are going to be affected after COVID? More, less people? Yeah, I don't know. It's this whole process has been a huge, just like, not learning curve, but everyone in the music industry is just trying to figure it out as we go along. Like Alberta specifically, we don't have anything, but I know people in Manitoba, venues are having, half capacity shows with like social distancing, obviously like no moshing or things like that. But I think a couple things come to mind for me. I think there are going to be maybe people that don't want to jump to going back to shows right away because either they're waiting for a vaccine to become available to everyone. Maybe they are just being overcautious, or, they are paranoid or whatever. I feel like I teeter from both sides of this, but I think that there are those people that are going to maybe wait to go to shows, even if it becomes socially acceptable to do so. But I also think that there are going to be a number of people who maybe, they used to go to shows, like every show every weekend or whatever it was, and then maybe they weaned off and they were like, oh, I'll go to Wild Rose Hardcore Fest, and then I'll go to the odd, Calgary show, or, wherever they live. And I think because of the, very huge flux of the supply and demand of shows, that once they do come back, I think you're going to see a lot more people who maybe go back to that mentality of just going to as many shows as they can, just to, not in fear of, another global pandemic happening, but realizing how, vital that is and how fragile the opportunities can just slip away. And, none of us, no one listening or watching this saw this whole thing coming and thought that, hardcore and like more DIY music is really, hurting because of it. There's so many fests that were canceled, and, I'm trying to, I guess, try to do my part as far as like trying to keep the spirit of hardcore going, instead of just like waiting on the sidelines and just waiting for shows to come back. And I think it's different for everyone. I think, people having breaks and, able to reassess things in their lives is super important. But yeah, I think it's going to be I think it might balance themselves out. I'm honestly really curious if any venues or anything do like, like testing for temperatures before shows, forcing people to self-isolate if they are moshing at a show. Because even in a normal world, you go to a big fest like LDB, and then so many people are sick, and they're just like, I think a lot of people are realizing now how much germs can spread in these kind of settings, and hopefully people's hygienes will just be better overall. But yeah, that's at least the one thoughts on that. My friend Tyson from Bar Down, shout out to you. He asked a couple questions, but this one was interesting. He said, what is the research process in regards of learning about a guest featured on the podcast? So great question. I think, the podcast, I feel like is still in its infancy. Like this is episode, 49, maybe 50, depending on, how things are released. But when you look at a podcast like Joe Rogan's or any others, they're into their, 500 and up in episodes. So, when it comes to picking a guest, the things that are really important to me, let me just take a little sip here. The things that are important to me are, I like to be able to showcase that hardcore is a music genre that people have so many different paths getting into that, and it's not just handed like Madball and Earth Crisis and Agnostic Front records when they were birthed. There was a plethora of people that came through metalcore, came through like the call it the Rise Records, like screamo scene. There's people that came from like grunge music. So being not only showcasing that, but also showcasing that there are people who were jocks when they went into hardcore. There was people who were emo kids, metalheads, powerlifting. And so not only showing the diversity in the music, but also in call it the lifestyle as well. So, I love learning about different things on how like people use hardcore and their passion in music in other areas of their life, whether it's like BMXing or, hosting a radio show or doing activism in just like their everyday life. So personally, I love that shit. I love showcasing that hardcore is just this beautiful mesh of all these different people with different backgrounds, and we all come together with this love of this, very aggressive and loud sounding music. So when it comes to picking a guest, I always, that's always at the back of my mind. And I know that people are going to gradually or naturally, they're going to pick listening to episodes with people that they know in certain bands. Like, oh, here's Lumpy from Sanction. I like Sanction. I'm going to listen to this. But over time, I hope that this podcast becomes one that has a reputation of just featuring guests of what I mentioned before, just a sea of different things. So it's like, I don't know who, Max Moore is, but I'm going to check out this episode because I like this podcast and what it's bringing to me. And then you learn like, oh, Max is from Louisville and he's a cinematographer and he shoots like professional music videos for Code Orange and all these different things. And it's interesting for me to acquire certain guests, like land a guest for this podcast. And then, I post it and I'm super stoked on the interview and how it went. And then it doesn't, I guess, catch as much as I thought it would. And, always analyzing, like, is it just the guest isn't a musician or a front person or what have you? So I definitely, I'm ultimately going to interview the people that I want to chat with. There's plenty of people that I looked up to when I first started getting into music, and the opportunity that I can do a quick Zoom call with them is really, really cool. But I know at the same time, there's going to be certain guests that people want me to reach out to. So I think it's kind of a balance of I'm going to do one for me and I'm going to do one for you guys. And then it's kind of a balance of both. And again, hopefully it turns into just there's just all cool guests coming here on the Scoped Exposure podcast. Trent from Gadget. If you never found heavier music, what would your life path have been? That's a deep question for sure. So like I got into music, and then I kind of took a back seat before playing. This was before I was playing in bands, but I was like really into, obviously I was into videos, and I loved video games growing up. So I was doing this thing called machinima, which is, if anyone's seen like Red versus Blue, which is like kind of the birth origin of machinima. It's essentially just making videos with a video game engine. So Red versus Blue was using Halo. Fucking love Halo. I'm a huge Halo 2, Halo 3 fan. I'm really hoping Halo Infinite is as I guess it saves Microsoft and the Xbox team, but that's maybe a conversation for another podcast. So I feel like I would, if I wasn't so into like music, if heavy music and hardcore didn't exist, I honestly probably would have maybe done like streaming, or it would probably be another mesh of like video making, content making, and video games. I like Rooster Teeth. I follow a number of different content creators who are into video games, into Pokemon. So yeah, I would say probably something in that realm. I'll just say like a gaming streamer. I don't think I could play games professionally. I don't think the games that I was fucking with back then are maybe like quote unquote competitive. So probably would have done like, some Pokemon randomized Nuzlocke streams, or doing some Halo stuff. I'm just looking behind the camera. There's my GameCube with Super Smash Bros. Melee and iNinja. So I probably would have done something like that if hardcore didn't make its origin. Cody from Snake Pit wants to know what's been one of the largest challenges Scoped has had to deal with over the years. Love you guys. Love you. Love all the Snake Pit boys. Hardest challenge. So I'll say this. I'll say COVID. I think where we're placed geographically and how shows aren't as, call it, common in Western Canada, as opposed to maybe places like New York or California, or like maybe just the South in general, or even the Midwest. The Midwest, you can drive really between a lot of different places. I would say probably COVID, and dealing with how do we still make content that is hardcore related for people, and not just like resharing sets and old stuff that we've done. How do we make new shit? How do we keep the ball going? And I've said this on other podcasts before. I'm going to burp. Give me a couple seconds here, guys. Yeah. Okay. I've said it before. I really appreciate everyone who's been keeping up with us, and I think that most people are giving us the benefit of the doubt, where I think for me, I value getting things out in a timely way versus just sitting on them for a long time. And I look at someone like Sunny, or even Steven from 197, or all these other people who maybe have filmed more shows because they're more frequent and they have just more content to, I guess, carry them through this time of quarantine. I think we posted the very last like unreleased set, aside from Sedition, because that was kind of a more special thing, was like, that was in April, beginning of April, maybe end of March. And, COVID started pretty much at the beginning of March, at least here in North America. So yeah, just like, really adapt. And the podcast too, like I've always done stuff in person with people. So we did the full shift into into doing it online through Zoom. and then trying to be adaptive and just make, other stuff. Like, I thought the playlist really wasn't going to be as popular as it is, but we've had some really huge playlist engagements when we update it. Like, I'll post the band graphic, and I think one of those band graphics is like the most liked photo or picture on Instagram, and I think that's sick. I love that people, I'm a firm believer in, instead of just like looking into the camera and saying, "Hey guys, I want to, tell me what you want to see from Scoped in the next, you know, few months or whatever." Because I've seen that from so many content creators. I'm a firm believer is like, I'm gonna just like put something on your feed. I'm gonna create something. I'm gonna put time and effort into showing you something, whether it's a new series or a new initiative, putting content on an entirely new platform, and I'm gonna see how you take it, and whether you fuck with it right away or it takes a couple times to find the rhythm and adjust from there. I'd rather do that versus trying to not waste anyone's time, but just really trust my gut and just try and then listen and then adapt from there. So yeah, if there's anything that's been the hardest for Scoped, it's definitely been figuring out how to keep making content and keep growing during this time of no shows, because hardcore live sets will always be our bread and butter. That's not going away even when shows come back. But it's definitely challenging. That's no word of a lie. But again, I appreciate everyone who's been keeping up and rocking with us. I'm just checking the time. Oh, half an hour? Okay, yeah, we're going. Would you ever consider doing live stream sets, pre-recorded sets to an empty crowd? Yes, we are working on that right now. That's all I can really say, as this is this thing that I've been alluding to, but what we're working on is honestly going to be a huge showcase of not just what we can do at Scoped, but just Western Canada and maybe outside of that, just the talent that us Canadians have and the ability to work together. So when that drops, it's going to be special. So please keep your eye out for that. How many bands do you play in? That's around again. So I play in, I guess like two bands. I play in a band here from Calgary called Endgame. As it's funny, whenever I type in Scoped Exposure, Endgame is one of the first bands that's always suggested because we don't have a demo out yet. That'll be dropping really soon. Everything is recorded. It's just getting mixed. And then I play in another band called Locked In from Winnipeg. We're kind of like, call it a heavy hardcore, new metal fusion kind of band. So if you like shit like Kublai Khan or Left Behind or even like Orthodox in some cases, but that's I guess one of the other active band that I'm playing in. Active. I know Sean's gonna give a shit for that. What else do we got going here? Really sad boy 420 wants thoughts on creating a Scoped Exposure location, office / studio / venue / gallery. Yes, I have thought about that. One of my dreams here, honestly, is to have a space, whether it's one or multiple across Canada, where it could be a fusion of a bunch of different things, whether it's a venue, where it's a coffee shop, a donut place, because I fucking love donuts, and I feel like Calgary is really lacking on their donut game, and Winnipeg, where I'm from, is very on the donut game. But yeah, I would love to have that where it could just be a place, that we can have available for people to play, because, all ages, like cheap venues to rent are very, not few and far between. That's no matter where you go, I think. And so not only being a place for that, but also just a place for people to hang out, on the days that there aren't shows, and obviously like having something that's like vegan or veggie, whether it's like donuts or food. So yeah, that is something that I've thought about. There's a couple people that I have in mind as far as potentially being not not partners in, but essentially being like, okay, you're handling the food side of things, you're handling more of the day-to-day operations. Um, and the dream for me would be have all of that on the main level and then have kind of like a loft kind of second level where, I could have an office to do, scope stuff, just other general stuff, kind of like a co-working space, but just for scoped. We could have like a podcast studio, a place for, people to maybe even record and like mix bands. I kind of would love to be the very first place. I don't know if in the world, but for sure in Canada, where it's like a resource place for people in DIY music, not only for bands but also for people who are making content for them. So yeah, I'm seeing Scope kind of morph into this like fusion of like Hey 5 6 and No Echo, and Axe to Grind, and just like, instead of just trying to be like the best music show archivist I can, I just want to essentially build Scope to be a brand now that just, puts good bands in front of you, in a multitude of different ways, whether that's live sets, photos, podcast interviews, playlists, or a number of different aspects. So obviously that's a huge goal, to have a space like that. That's definitely a 5-year window at least. But who knows, if there's anyone who's listening who has a space and and wants to help see that vision through, that'd be sick. How much time is spent editing a usual Scope video? How much for a bigger band? Good question. My phone's not charging. 1 sec. Oh geez. Oh, it is charged. I did that thing where I was looking at a screenshot and my my battery was at like 25, and I guess at the time when I took that screenshot, it wasn't charging. No one cares about these little behind the scenes, Spencer. How much time does it take to do a Scope set? Yeah, it definitely varies. If it's at a fest, usually we're putting in a little bit more production value at a fest, whether that's having Liam or, someone do the audio engineering side of things. If there's multiple cameras that we need to cut between, and trying to plan those releases to be a little bit more special, having specific intros and outros. But I feel like if it's just like a simple local show and maybe the venue isn't big enough to have like multiple cameras, usually I can, throw that one single camera into my timeline, and everything's like in Scope just templated out. So usually I have to throw it in there. I change the show information as far as the band name, the venue, the date, the city or location, do a little color correction tweak. So I think for something as simple as that, it could be, with rendering time and uploading, it's probably like 2 to 3 hours. But for something that's a way more elaborate, like let's say it's a 4-camera Wild Rose set with a live audio mix, I feel like with the time that Liam's putting in, the time that myself or Jordan is putting in, that's maybe more in the realm of 10 to 15 hours. Yeah. And obviously those videos are just a little bit more higher value videos. I feel like more people are going to go and look back at past Wild Rose or festival videos versus like this random little show. But that random little show could have a really insane moment and people want to go back and look at. So you have to assess so many things when we have to assess so many things when we're going into documenting a show. It just can't be the same for every single one. Every venue is going to have a different sound situation. Every venue is going to have a different, you know, where people can stand situation. And, you know, me and Jordan, who also helps me film, have learned that, you know, maybe it's not always the best call to do two angles just because of how the venue is laid out. So I hope that answers your question as far as how long that takes. But yeah, there's every video takes work. Every video that we've put on the channel, like if you want to even just say there's an average amount of 5, but let's say like 4 hours, you know, to be like, you know, on the low side. If every video takes 4 hours to make as far as rendering, you can see how that adds up very, very fast over time. But you know, it's what I love to do personally. It's the thing that fulfills me when I can post something and people can see their friends or themselves or their favorite bands going off, and just, you know, being able to live that and watch that forever is like, that's the thing that I fucking love. What else do we got here? I hope this is interesting for people. What prompted the creative decision to cover all DIY music instead of just hardcore? I think I kind of mentioned this before. There's definitely shows that, you know, there's non-hardcore bands that I would like either not want to film, or, you know, halfway through I'm just like, this isn't it, fam. But I think the outlook that I have now is like, I'm literally gonna just press record. I'm gonna edit it, and if no one watches it but one person, at least that one person watched it. If I feel like if I know this will never happen, but if a video ever just has 0 views, like no one has watched it, like maybe that's where I'll like start being a little bit more choosy. But again, it goes back to that thought of like, well, you know, the band's going to care. Maybe the band's like grandma who they live across the country and they don't see them might care. They might want to watch it. You know, it's Scoped or myself. We're not in the business of like getting all these views. Views are nice. You know, that helps us grow and have a little bit of credibility. But I am far more interested of, you know, documenting stuff and having it fair for everyone. Because I've been on the receiving end where I've been at a show, someone's taking photos of a band that played after my band, and I go to ask them and they're like, oh, I'm just here to shoot that band. So, you know, if you're into documenting versus just like, I want to get a couple photos of a band that's going to get me some likes on Instagram, there's a difference there. So if you're into documenting, just document all the bands. Like, I know people have to have breaks at shows if they're working for a fest, but I thought I heard something. I get that, but you know, I feel like you never know. You never know if a band's going to pop off. You don't know if someone in that band is going to very unfortunately have an earlier life than maybe the rest of us. So, you know, I'm a firm believer in keeping the cameras rolling, documenting the scene, because even if there's people who are like, why are you doing this right now? Like, why do you have to document every show at X venue? I'm anticipating people coming and being like, yo, I understand why you were doing that now, and I didn't before, and I'm sorry if I gave you grief. Favorite non-hardcore band. Favorites. Oh, there's like 3 questions in here, but I'll just say favorite non-hardcore band. That's a good question. What am I listening to right now? Let me pull up my Spotify. I was listening to the new Logic album. Favorite non-hardcore band. Well, there's a lot. Oh, I'm like, why is all my recently played all hardcore? And it was because I was doing shit for the playlist. Oh, okay. Honestly, I like really like chill, like I like lots of like chill hop, if anyone knows what that is. I was listening to Taylor Swift today because she put out a new album that a lot of people have been posting about. Citizen. I like hardcore Jason stuff. I don't know. I'm gonna say that. I don't know if that's a good enough answer for you, but whatever. It's kind of tough to put me on the spot. What are all of your favorite mosh stories? Got to continue the classic podcast question. I forgot that Tyson wrote this. Favorite mosh stories. Let me take a sip while I think about that. There's definitely like some funny stuff, like people doing some ridiculous things at Wilder. I was like, like shout out to Reed, like picking up, fill in the blank member of Backbite and just, twirling around like a T, just like a spin top kind of thing. That's always fun. I think about Dustin from Putrid Brew getting kicked in the face during that Lower Species set and capturing that on film. That's always funny. I'm trying to think as well. Like, I always think about just like how things have really come full circle in some ways. The very first time I filmed the Calgary Hardcore Festival, when it was called Southern Alberta, that was back in 2016. I would always see this dude in an Ottawa Senators jersey always catching my eye. And now obviously that's like, everyone knows that's Evan McIsaac if you're from Calgary here, and like now living here and have become friends with him and had him on the podcast as well and talk about like his background around Ottawa's, that's kind of, that's something that's kind of cool off the top of my head. Also shout out Snow and Flurry Fest. So many hard moshers from that. I'm thinking about like Marcus who came through from Florida and just like moshing in like a high vis like drip outfit. That was really sick. Naraya getting like slammed in the side of the face during that transgression set from Kyle, and he like just went down. It was just like it was like the Minecraft like ooh, and just fell down. He was okay though. He came through. So I'm trying to think if I can think of a mosh story that I haven't filmed. Okay, this isn't really a mosh story, but if anyone who's listening from Winnipeg like knows this person, like let me know in the comments. But I was going to a series of shows either at the Park Theater or like the Garrick Center even, and these would be more of your like, let's say 300 to 500 person kind of shows. These are your like more like August Burns Red is coming to town or something like that. So I don't know who this dude is, but when I was just going to shows there, he would get up on stage and he could just do a backflip on the spot and like land, and like every band that he like came up and did that for, like vocalist is just like so blown away by it. I don't know what that dude's name is. I've never seen him not land it. So like, he would just stage dive immediately after. So that's not a mosh story, but that's definitely a really iconic show story that I haven't had the pleasure of capturing on screen here. So yeah, shout out to whoever the fuck that is. I think I'll start to wrap it up there. I'll do one more question here because Ryan asked so many questions, which I appreciate. He asked, future plans, how do you plan on making Scope bigger and better? Yeah, so again, that whole mindset of just like trying shit and adapting to what people are engaging with, that's really the main thing that I've been doing and have seen the slow growth. And like people have said that about playing in bands, and just I applied this to Scoped as well. Like hardcore is not a marathon, hardcore is a marathon, not a sprint. So I'm not trying to rush into getting to the same notoriety or level that maybe Sonny or anyone else is. I totally know that geographically speaking, we're in totally opposite areas. Different strengths and weaknesses as well. So when it comes to how I make scope bigger, it's just giving you guys more content, giving you guys more playlists, more podcasts, more live sets, more photos, different kinds of shows when it comes to hardcore. I'm always thinking about different things and how to execute on those. How to involve more bands that, otherwise we wouldn't have the opportunity to do so. So, it's trial by fire. It's putting out some weird stuff that maybe I thought was cool and then no one fucks with, and then it's like, okay, scrap that idea, let's try something else. And I'll say the other thing is bring more people into the mix. Having Scope be more of a brand and having more people involved, definitely there's some crossover because we have to have meetings, there's other opinions that need to be considered, and figuring out what's the best thing that everyone wants to do. It's not just me. There's Cole, Matt, Jordan, Liam, and other people that I've reached out to as well to collaborate with, on a small time basis. But now it's like, well, you're doing such a good job, why don't you just join up with the team? So I think over time, the way Scope looks is ever changing. But I think the theme that I always want to keep present is just always providing people with content around this music genre and putting new bands in front of you. And, because that's the other thing I've learned is not everybody is going to want to discover new band through watching a 20-minute live set. It might just be listening to a podcast that I put out and you're like, I really like what this guy or this gal or this person has to say. I'm going to check out their band. Wow, this band is fucking amazing. Or you listen to the playlist and it's on shuffle and then just one riff really catches your eye and then you go listen to the other stuff. So I am recognizing that everyone's discovering new music at a different pace. Discovers new music in different ways, and I just want to have my pulse on all of those and be contributing to all those different ways. And again, I really appreciate everyone who's been supporting us since day one. If this is the very first podcast you've ever listened to us, thank you. And for the people that aren't into it, one day you'll get it, and even if you don't, that's cool too. I'm just gonna keep doing me because I know a lot of people rely on me, and I rely on Scoped. Without it, I definitely don't know where I would be, but I'm happy that I'm sitting here in my room on a Sunday afternoon, drinking this drink with all of y'all. Well, I don't know if you're drinking, but again, thank you so much for listening. I don't know, again, I'm trying this. If you guys want to do another Q&A, if you want me to do another Q&A podcast, just, comment it. That's actually that is the way for me to know if anyone actually is liking this. And I totally know that it's more like 4 or 5 people that are maybe just speaking for the masses. But if you like it, let me know in the comments. If you have a question for a future episode, comment that below. If you want to follow me at SpicySpence _ on Instagram. And again, you? What the fuck? Again, thank you. Again, you. I should just say again, you, if I'm trying to say thank you again. All right, no one's listening at this point, but thank you again for listening to this podcast or watching it, sharing it. However you're supporting us, I appreciate it. And I'll talk to you guys soon. I am out. I'm just going to drink the rest of this bev for this podcast. This may be a bad idea. Okay, too much in my mouth. All right, see ya.